Alright guys, let's take a look at comparing and ordering decimals. Before we actually get into the process of comparing and ordering decimals, let's first look at the fundamentals. The first and probably most important fundamental is to make sure you line up your decimals. By lining up your decimals, you're ensuring that your digits are in the correct place value. It's very important that your digits are in the correct place value so you can determine the value of the number. You're also going to work from left to right because the digit to the left is always going to be a greater value than the digit to the right. And lastly, you want to make sure you write neatly. By writing neatly, you're ensuring that you have everything lined up correctly and you're ready to go and solve the problem, and there will be no mistakes just based on user error. And you'll see what I'm talking about shortly. Now the strategy we're using for today is going to be called rack and stack. So when you think of comparing and ordering decimals, always think rack and stack. Alright, now let's take a look at the process for ordering decimals. Now when you're ordering decimals, you're going to be given a set of numbers. Now the first thing you have to do is determine what are you going to do with that set of numbers. Are you going to order them from greatest to least or least to greatest? Here we're going to order our set of numbers from greatest to least. Now a little bit later I'm going to show you how you can take that same set of numbers and easily convert it back over to least to greatest. Now the first thing you want to do is you want to take the first number that is presented, which is 1 and 48 thousandths, and you want to write it out. Now you want to make sure you leave space between each digit, and you want to take the number right after it, which is 929 thousandths, and write it directly underneath your first number. Now you want to make sure you line up your decimals, which is ensuring that each digit is in its correct place value, which is very important. Now you're going to take your next number and write it directly underneath that, and take your next number and write it directly underneath the one above it. Now you take 92 hundredths. Now if you notice when you write 92 hundredths, it comes out there's nothing in the thousandths place, but what we're going to do is we're going to put a 0 in the thousandths place just to make it visually easier to work with the thousandths columns and the 92 hundredths. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put lines in between each column, making it where you can visually look at, okay, this is your ones column, this is your tenths column, this is your hundreds column, and this is your thousands column. And now we're ready to go ahead and solve this problem. Now the first thing we're going to do when looking at the problems, we're going to look at the ones column. Now we're looking for the greatest value of digits in the ones column. Now when we look, they have two ones and everything else is a 0. Now being that there are two ones, all we're going to look at then is the 1 and 48 thousandths, and we're going to look at the 1 and 97 thousandths because those are the two greatest values in the ones column. So we're going to cross out our ones, and now we're going to move over to the tenths place. And remember, we're only looking at the 1 and 48 thousandths and the 1 and 97 thousandths. Now they both have zeros in the tenths place as well, so we're going to go ahead and cross those out, and now we're looking at the hundredths place. Alright, and now 1 in 97 thousandths has a 9 in the hundredths place, and 1 in 48 thousandths has a 4 in the hundredths place. So 9 is the greater value digit, and therefore 1 in 97 thousandths is your greatest number. Now we're going to go ahead, once we figured out 1 in 97 thousandths is our greatest number, we're going to go ahead and cross it out because we're done with it. Now we know our second greatest value number because we were just working with it. So 1 in 48 thousandths is our second greatest number. So now you cross that out, and now you only have three numbers to work with. Now we're going to go back to our ones column, and we're going to look. We have 3 zeros in the ones column, so we're going to cross all three of those zeros out, and we're going to move over to our tenths column. Now in our tenths column we have 2 nines, and you have an 8 here. So we're going to look at our 2 nines, we're going to cross them out, and now we're only looking at 929 thousandths and 92 hundredths. And we're looking at in the hundreds column, and they both have 2's in the hundreds column. So we're going to go ahead and cross those out, and now we're going to move over to our thousands column. Now, being that we put that 0 there earlier as our place marker, we're able to visually see that 9 is greater than 0. So we're going to go ahead and cross out the 9, and now 929 thousandths is our third greatest number, and 92 hundredths is going to be our fourth greatest number. And so now we're done with those two, and because there's only one number left, we automatically know that's going to be our fifth and final number. Alright, remember earlier how I was telling you how I was going to show you how to convert the numbers from least to greatest? Well, here's how we're going to do it right now. It's the best way to solve a ordering decimals problem is to go ahead and convert it from greatest to least, because it's easier to determine the values that way when you're solving the problem. But once you've already solved it, go ahead and solve it from greatest to least, and then just go ahead and reverse the numbers. So you have your 5, which is your smallest number, but when you're converting from least to greatest, the 5 is going to become a 1. And so now you go to and look at your 4, which is going to become a 2. Your 3 stays the same, 2 becomes a 4, and the 1, which was your greatest number, now is your 5. And there you have it. You just easily converted the numbers that you originally had from greatest to least now to least to greatest. Alright, now comparing decimals is just like ordering decimals, and I would say it's easier because you're only working with two numbers instead of multiple sets of numbers. So what we're going to do here is we're going to take our numbers and we're going to write them out right on top of each other. So we're going to take 1 and 48 thousandths and write 1 and 97 thousandths directly underneath it. We're going to draw our lines for our columns as we've done. Here, here, and here. And so you have your ones column, your tenths column, your hundreds column, and your thousands column. And we're going to work the same way we were ordering decimals. Cross out your ones because they're both the same. Move over to your tenths column. You have two zeros. Cross out your zeros. And now we're in the hundreds column, and we have two different numbers. You have a 4 and you have a 9. Being that 9 is greater than 4, that means 1 and 97 thousandths is going to be greater than 1 and 48 thousandths. Alright guys, that's pretty much it. All you gotta do for comparing and ordering decimals is remember your fundamentals, make sure you line up your decimals, make sure each digit is in the correct place value, work from left to right, and write neatly, and it should be a piece of cake. Now, some key things I want you to keep in mind when you're actually comparing and ordering decimals is they're not always going to present it as greatest to least or least to greatest. There's other variations in which they're going to present it to you. They may say tallest to shortest, or shortest to tallest, biggest to smallest, longest to shortest, or fastest to slowest. Now the one I want you to pay attention to the most is fastest to slowest. Now remember, if you're doing something faster, you're trying to do it in a shorter amount of time versus a longer amount of time. So fastest to slowest, in reality, they're really saying least to greatest. So always keep that in mind when you're dealing with fastest to slowest. You're really doing least to greatest versus greatest to least. But other than that, comparing and ordering decimals is a real simple, straightforward process. If you do it this way, I guarantee you should have success every time you do comparing and ordering decimals.